you all. Welcome to our Bus Forum meeting. And just before we kick off, a little bit of the usual housekeeping. We're not expecting any alarm to go off. So if we do hear them, I'm afraid it's straight out that door into the car park. Careful crossing the road. Right. So I'm Councillor Mike Johnston. I'll be chairing the meeting. Amy and Nikki from upstairs in the office. Rob, First Bus, Carl from North Somerset Council, and Jackie from North Somerset Council. So I think Carl's going to give a presentation on the screen at some point in relation to Westlink, beg your pardon. And the usual forum will take questions and such like from the floor during the course of the discussion. The roving mic will be passed around. So you have to use the roving mic because then it goes up on the line and gets recorded, etc. Right, so I think we'll kick off with the usual sort of agenda, which is to discuss the bus services as they currently operate, the X4, the X5 and the X10 from Portishead, and the Westlink minibus service. So we'll go through those in sort of order, and then we'll just pick up on various other aspects of it, the BSIP bus hub proposals, the replacement of the shelters, and so on. And some of the agenda will be steered by yourselves as well. So X4, First Bus run the X4 service, and the introduction of the electric buses. I'm sure, like me, you've probably all experienced the electric buses, which are now coming on stream. My personal view of them, I think they're very nice, they're very comfortable, they're very quiet, and they are good. And I'm hoping that there haven't been many teething problems. I was on one service where the driver, I overheard him speaking to his supervisor to say that he only had 75% of his battery, and he was a bit concerned about doing his complete tour back to the bus station, X1 to Weston-super-Mare, and then back round again. So there are obviously issues in respect to that, but we'll hear about more of that in a moment. And internally, I find that it's a bit disconcerting when you don't know whether the bus is stopping or not. There's no stopping. And downstairs, of course, there's the back of one of the screens where they could probably have that information available for people to see whether the bus is. So you've just got to really rely on the audible sound of the button being pressed. And upstairs, of course, it's the same issue. But overall, I think they're very, very nice. Bit boring, bit box-like, not like the new Route Masters in London, which I think are very streamlined and very attractive. However, we'll hear more about that in a moment. The service itself, 3 buses an hour still. We have put in a request for a 4th, which may or may not happen. We'll again hear about that, which could then serve the other end of the High Street in Bristol Road, which is something that we're very concerned about, and I know that you as residents are concerned about, and it's something which is obviously being flagged up on other occasions. And the possibility of perhaps returning to the old 369, 359, well, anyway, the old days when one went round one way of Moor Road and the other one came round the other. But that might be quite difficult to coordinate into a timetable. So, Rob, I'm going to pass you the mic, and you tell us about how things are settling down with the new electric buses and so on.
Okay. So I need to. Yeah. Sorry. Good afternoon. I'm very glad to be here to talk about the X4 after the electric buses have arrived, because I think they have been quite transformative for the service. Battery capacity has not been a problem at all. If there's any EV owners here, the buses have 466 kilowatt hours of battery, which is what a typical UK house uses in about 56 days. So we haven't had any issues so far. They should do 250, 300 miles a day, and we've seen that performance met, and that's with the air conditioning going as well, because they're fully air conditioned, and they've got all the other sort of mod cons we have nowadays. So we've been really pleased. The buses have been pretty much faultless, which is not always something we're used to when we introduce a new fleet. So yeah, it's been a fantastic result. We had all 24 on the road within about 2 to 3 weeks. So it's been quite nice to see some of the diesel buses off packing for the next phase. Although not North Somerset services, but in the general area, we've got another 160 electric buses coming next year for the area. So it's a really exciting move. You know, we've got a 2035 target to be fully zero emission. It could well happen sooner than that around here. So it's yeah, it's really encouraging. We've got for the stopping light issue. You'll see if you're using the buses this week, we've put an upgrade on there. So on the screens, the next stop information screens on the bus, it now comes up with bus stopping. It's one of those things we've just had to configure since they've arrived. So that'll hopefully deal with that issue.
Good.
So yeah, that's on the way. In terms of the other parts of the X4, we've seen some really encouraging growth over the last just over 2 years since the bus service improvement plan started. We've seen passengers increase. We've been able to put evening services on. We've been able to improve the timetable at various points in the day, and we're getting to we're seeing the fruits of that. The reliability is improved. We're using our sort of AI powered scheduling software, where in the old days you'd have had a quite straightforward to follow timetable where buses are left at the same point in every hour through the day, which looks very nice on paper. But the reality is that to meet that is just impossible with the traffic conditions as they are. I've just come down the X4 from Bristol now and waiting to get onto the Brunel Way bridges, the swing bridges in Bristol. That can take 10 minutes. That can take 2 minutes. It's really we've been able to provide much more accurate and punctual timetables by using the historical data, which means that at points the timetables are funny or 22, 23 minutes frequency, but actually your bus will turn up when it says. Particularly as more people are using apps to plan, they see exact times when the buses are meant to arrive at the stop.
On that point, Rob, could you just describe to us how the RTI works, real-time information? When a bus is cancelled or whether it's running late, does the information get passed to the bus stops via yourselves or by some other sort of centralised body? How does it operate?
So with cancellations, when they do happen, we input those at our end onto a system. We have some people working in our control room who monitor the network, and if there are instances where things don't go right and there has to be a cancellation, they'll input that, and that feeds through to the First Bus app, and it feeds through to the screens by the roadside. And for late running buses, so the predictions, they happen automatically. So on the buses we have GPS built in, and they constantly give a feed of where the buses are, and that feeds into the prediction engine, which the council which you'll run, and that feeds the roadside stops. So and that data is now freely available. So you'll see lots of websites. I think there's one called bustimes.org, which is quite widely used, and that uses just the open data service, which we supply the data to.
I had a caveat though. The core of the system.
Carl.
Sorry. In the background, the system has the default timetables in each screen. So if there's a loss of communication between the screen and the computer system, the screen reverts to default timetables and it will count down. But if it hasn't recognised the comms have lost or the bus isn't coming, it will disappear. And that is a known issue that we see at the roadside, where sometimes where comms is lost, it will tell you there's a bus coming by default when it isn't. We know that's an issue.
And we're upgrading our ticket machines with the GPS system in September, which should improve things further.
Okay, we'll take a couple of questions from the audience.
Thank you. I have enjoyed your new electric buses, apart from one day It was very interesting. There's just down by, it is called Harbourside Surgery, not Marina Surgery. Somebody got off the bus after it sounding like a doorbell tune, which is very off-putting. And at the next minute, the bus is saying, we have to exit the bus because there's been an incident or something. And this went on for about 3 minutes. Nobody got off the bus. The bus driver didn't actually know what was going on either, because the doors wouldn't open anyway. So if there had actually been an incident, we would have been on the bus. I don't know what caused it. The bus driver didn't do it. So I wonder if you're aware. I said, did you not get training that this might happen? He said no. So that whether your bus drivers know that if they touch a thing by accident, they can cancel it straight away. I mean, it was quite funny, to say the least, because everybody just sat there going, you know, what's going on? It was like a panic button. Just quickly look at my notes. There's some...
Yeah, it'll be the panic button for when the drivers
you have
think they're bit, yeah, and
Yeah.
Often the panic button causes a bit of a brain fade panic in the drivers, and they can't think where to find the reset button. So I'm glad he got it.
So that with the doorbell ring, it sounds exactly like, I don't have a doorbell, sounds exactly like the doorbell. Now, I don't know if that is the same noise on all the buses, but it was on the one that I went to into Bristol. So that was confusing.
I think
the
you're
thing
correct.
with stopping,
Yeah.
you know, I'm a bus person, so when I've got something to say about them, it's usually not happy. Okay, I want to know also, we're talking about the X4. Why does it leave Sainsbury's at 5 minutes to 9 when I have to be in Bristol at an appointment at 9:45, right next door to your bus station? I'm going to leave that open.
Question at the back.
Thanks. Just to carry on from the last speaker, I had a more dramatic incident of a malfunction in the alarm system. I was sitting in the bus about the first time I'd been on one, and suddenly there was a loud voice saying, "This bus is under attack, dial 999. And nobody seemed to know what to do. I mean, nobody dialed 999, but I don't know if it was the driver pressing the wrong button or not knowing how to press the button to switch off, but it was quite scary. My point, though, is about the real-time information. Certainly on the X4, it is not reliable. I have waited at bus stops in No Road, and it has told me that a bus is coming in 10 minutes, 7 minutes, 3 minutes, and then it disappears, and the bus does not come. But this is not to do with the timetable. This is the real-time information. Today, I was in Bristol, and I was about 10 minutes away from the bus stop in Anchor Road to get the X4 back out here, and it said, next bus, 11 minutes. So that's fine, I've got time to get down there. I was halfway down when it suddenly said, I had only walked for about 3 minutes, and it said, bus arriving in 4 minutes. So I had to put it eventually turned up at about what it would have been when it originally said 11 minutes. But meantime, it said it's 4 minutes, which is completely wrong. And this happens regularly. And I would use the bus more if I could rely on it turning up when it says, and particularly the real-time information near the time, because I live 5 minutes from the bus stop, so I need to know whether it's coming or not.
Thank you. Bob, is your question in relation to similar?
Hi, there's just a couple of questions I have. Obviously, with the new electric buses, they weigh a lot more and considerably a lot more than a normal diesel bus, which means the infrastructure of the roads, I think that's been raised quite a few times now by the public and the government. Obviously, with the additional weight of electric cars and buses, that's a more strain on the road infrastructure, because obviously they're not designed like some of the roads that come across the villages are not designed for heavy vehicles, and that tonnage on a new electric bus will push that wait on those routes through villages. The second question is, which my honourable friend that works for North Somerset by the side of me have raised, and myself, is with electric buses, why is there no bins on them? Being a regular bus user for the last year, because I'm unable to drive at the moment, so literally I get the bus every single day. I noticed on the electric buses that our lovely younger generation decide to poke the bottles down the side of the seats rather than anything else, because there's actually no bins anywhere. And ironically, on the bus that I was travelling back from Weston today, states on it, please take your rubbish home with you. If not, please use the bin provided. But strangely enough, even on that diesel bus, there was no bin. I'm sure North Somerset and First all for obviously keeping our streets and towns tidy. And ironically, there's very few bins now at bus stops anymore. And obviously there's no bins on the buses. And finally, obviously two people have already mentioned, and the ironic thing is in the news lately that there's now going to be a up to £10,000 fine for people with music or listening to TV or anything on their mobile phones, even through their headphones on buses. But we obviously have to listen to a lovely North Somerset female voice constantly calling out every single bus stop, not alone scan on or scan off, or as you were saying, warning messages. Frankly, myself, even at 63, has to put a set of headphones on because I don't really want to listen to her the entire trip of my journey.
Thank you, Bob. Right, you have a little collection of questions there to answer. Team, and can I just briefly apologise because I didn't mention that Jason from the the X10 is online, and you tend to forget people on the screen. So apologies for that, Jason.
Right, so no worries.
We'll come to you shortly.
I can answer a couple of questions, and obviously Rob will answer a few. So it's now UK adopted law that there is next stop announcements for those hard of hearing, visually impaired, and there is a set volume that has to be. That's why all buses as of this summer, isn't it? Well, now, really?
Should have the age of the bus.
Yeah, most of ours are new enough now, aren't they, to have it compulsory. So, and I would argue most people find it quite useful to know which stop is coming next and when to get off. So that's here to stay with you.
You have an information board that will flash that well at the same time.
Yeah, and it's audio and visual is legally required now, depending on the age of the vehicle. But all our vehicles generally, or in the area, are new enough to have it. Litter bins is an interesting subject. So, as we all know, there is not a lot of money sloshing around in local government and hasn't been for over a decade. Every bin costs hundreds of pounds a year to empty, and there isn't enough money to have the bins at the roadside. So the general polite request is that people do take their litter home or dispose of it where they can. At the end of the day, you don't have a divine right to litter everything that you don't want to carry. So, and we're in an austere time where we can't afford to put bins at every stop. That's unfortunately a sad fact. At the busiest stops and in the interchanges, Jackie probably come on to that, we have provided bins. But it's just, there just isn't enough money to put them everywhere, whether we like it or not. And again, I've gone through the reasons why the RTI system is flaky. This sort of semi-good news on the RTI system is the contract is now in its final 12 months or so, and the system that runs it and powers it in the background, does the predictions, is going to be replaced or renewed or renegotiated. There are significant advancements in systems available to councils, and to be fair, the ticket machines do have an impact, and there is an investment from many companies to upgrade their ticket machines across the country to make that system more reliable. An alternative to the RTI system I would recommend is the bustimes.org, those that are able to use smartphones, because it does generally show the bus tracking along the road on your phone on a map, and it's, I think, a better system than our RTI at the moment in many cases. Over to you, Rob.
Yeah, so for the RTI, for those screens, you saying Anchor Road, wasn't it? We provide where the bus is and the schedule data, and then it's up to the council system to come up with that prediction on the screen. So it's very welcome for that upgrade to be coming.
GPS.
The actual screen in Anchor Road doesn't show the Portishead buses. When they're supposed to be showing, it just scrambled.
That's being repaired today, I believe. I've seen a message about that. Was it this morning? Might be after you were there, I hope.
It's been in a bit of a state for a while, isn't it?
What else we had? The weight of the buses. The maximum permitted weight of a diesel bus is the same as an electric bus. So for the buses that used to be on the X4, their maximum weight was just over 19 tons, and they could carry 104 passengers. The electric buses are heavier without passengers, but they have a lower capacity. So there's no, in theory, a busy bus. The weight difference is quite modest. But like you say, I'd be much more interested in looking at all those Range Rovers that have replaced Fiestas.
That's widely disproven. I'm going to dispute that as a person who's been in electrification for years. The weight is more evenly distributed across the vehicle rather than centered at the front. The torque is smoother, so it causes less friction. The tyre wear is less, and there are no emissions at the tailpipe. So I'm not going into massive conspiracy theories or stupid debates about that. It's widely acknowledged worldwide that electric vehicles are around at least a third less polluting overall, including brake dust emissions and tyre emissions. So I'm sorry, I'm not entertaining this nonsense.
Well, we're going to move on now to the X5, which of course had its revisal. We'll move on, I'm afraid, because we've had 20 minutes or so on the X4. The X5 service changed quite radically a few weeks ago. And Carl, would you like to update us on how it's gone, whether it's settled down, or both of you, in relation to its new service and the provision getting more footfall?
So it's still sort of quite early days, and the X5 is it's very dependent on college movements, and school movements are a big part of it. So it's quite difficult to compare like for like because it's exam time at schools and colleges, so the footfall's not quite what it would have been prior to April. I suppose, I mean, the main thing is we haven't seen a huge drop off from changing the route, like which would have been the worst case scenario. It's very consistent with the numbers we had before the change. So, but yeah, it's difficult to make these comparisons so early on, and with the changing travel habits from colleges.
The predominant reason, there's been a friction about the routing of the X5 since time and eternity around here. The predominant reason we are moving to work with the college is funding, ultimately. There is a strong demand from students in Portishead to get to college quicker. The college, moving forward, have offered to part fund the X5, given that they are a business and they want people to go to that college. The other improvements to it are that it now serves all the college sites and to the hospital more directly, so it has a benefit. The friction to that is we've obviously no longer go through Yatton and Cleve, which is a consequence of, I guess, where the funding lies. And funding is important because while we've had a lot of investment from government in bus services locally, they're starting to normalise that post-pandemic now. So in real terms, it's tapering down a bit. But also in tapering down the sort of post-COVID funding, they are starting to talk of a more long-term settlement for bus funding in the region, which will be lower but more consistent, and that will allow us to probably invest with a bit more confidence in what we'd call socially necessary services, rather than effectively recovering the commercial services. And I think there's a balance and a phased approach to that over probably the next 18 months.
Carl, for people wanting to go from Portishead to, say, Yatton or Congsbury, have you tailored in a timetabled interchange in Clevedon to be facilitating that?
Currently, the X10 is on a 2-hourly frequency. There is a genuine debate to be had amongst residents and the public about where Westlink fits in with bus services or not, and what, do we provide a more regular scheduled service? Do we try and fix Westlink? I don't know. We're going to have that discussion with the public, councillors, everybody.
Nikki, you have a question from the floor.
I would like to know the X5 now leaves the Sainsbury's at 10 to 9, which means that you can't use your bus pass anymore until 20 past 10. But even more important, though I was told that the X4 has been discussed, I would like a good reason why the X4 cannot go through Portishead High Street and up Bristol Road. Thank you.
Back to you, Rob. Timetabling, yes, it has been an issue. We have had correspondence from some of our constituents on this matter, particularly for those in North Western and the Bristol Road area.
I think for the X5 departure time, that I think it's just to try to keep the frequency going. If we were staying in Portishead for another 20 minutes to hit 9 o'clock, then it could be a gap.
It's a valid point, well raised. We've got a cycle of changes coming in September, so it's raised and noted, and we'll take it away and look at it. I don't believe it was intentionally done to stop people using a bus. From North Somerset's perspective, we want people to get on a bus, whether we pay for it or you pay for it. We're not fussy about that.
And of course, I mean, whilst it might leave the Sainsbury's bus stop at 5 to 9, by the time it gets down to Hallidays, it's just gone 9.
That's no good.
The X5 goes that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't.
Goes through the high street.
It's at Sheepway by 9 o'clock. Not Sheepway. Down further. It's down further.
I mean,
help pensioners at all.
Rest assured.
I mean, I know the bus passes 9 o'clock, but is there any way you could use it at 5 to 9?
Well, we've heard from Carl that there might be some tweaks in September.
Yeah, I know, but every time they change the bus table, it makes it worse. The bus used to be about 10 past 9, then it was 25 past 9, and now it's 10 to 9, the X5. And I don't get it, why it's got to keep changing.
Until after 9, yeah.
I used to have to go to a meeting at 10 o'clock. I can't get there by bus now to drive. It's supposed to be encouraging us to use the bus, and we can't use it.
Okay,
you can
Nikki.
use the bus, but you can't use it free is a truth. And the government set the rules on the scheme for free concessionary pass use. And actually, we're more generous in this area than we should be. Yeah. By definition of law, the scheme has to be from 9:30 to about 4:30 in the morning. We actually allow 9 o'clock. Now, I understand the frustrations, and we've noted, and we can take it away and look at it, but I don't believe there was any intention to cut people off using a bus that, frankly, we need as many people on as possible to keep it going. So there's obviously a degree. What we have to remember is we have also had to time the bus to meet the demands of the people who most need it and fund it. And ultimately, the X5 is now going to be heavily supported by the college, and therefore moving people to the college is one of its primary purposes as a socially necessary service. So I get the point. We'll take it away.
Thank you. Can I just add to the point about the high street? I'll make a plea for bus service down the high street. I live the other end of the village, and it's a long way to come down here. Now, down this way, we've got Clarence House, an Indian restaurant, 2 care homes, Gordano School, and this season, Portishead Town have been promoted. Now, I know football teams don't play all the time, but Portishead Football Ground is really being used all the time by lots of youngsters and handicapped people. So a bus down the High Street and Bristol Road, I think, is absolutely essential. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to be refereeing walking football for Parkinson, and I've got to walk from where I live down the High Street to get to Portishead Football Ground. I'd love to get a bus.
As mentioned, as noted, we are aware of all this issues, and we, like you, want to see something resolved around it.
Where's it going to happen, though?
Indeed. Lisa, you have a question.
Hiya, Carl. The X11 and the X5.
X11.
the X11 that goes from Clevedon to Yatton.
Okay.
It's coming in before the X5 leaves Portishead to Clevedon. There's about 9 minutes in it. And for anyone wanting to use Yatton train station, and of course I have a huge connection with Yatton, they don't interlink. Is there any way that the timetable can be tweaked that the X5 comes in before the X11?
In a perfect world, yes.
Because I think
part of the reason of having a bus hub in Clevedon is to get stuff to merge and people to then carry on.
But it's not happening.
Part of it is the frequency and part of it is the demands across the route. So the X11, I believe...
There's about a 2 hour, so I think...
Yeah, the frequency is not even close to ideal on that. And I've asked the team to look at other options going forward. One of the theoretical things we'd like to look at, and we are looking at, is whether we actually have a bus that goes between Cleve, Yatton and Clevedon on a high frequency, because it actually would then link up the X1 with the X4. The X1 with the X6 and 7 more frequently, and would allow access to the train station more frequently. The problem we have is it's very, very difficult for the next few months to plan anything until we know what the new government's intentions are post the national spending review. And they're not going to tell us that until very early June. And the complication there is bus registrations generally need to be in and pretty much finalised in the month of June. So we're not going to have a lot of time to do anything particularly strategic this bus change. The next real opportunity is probably going to be April, unless we can convince Wecker that maybe we should have an extraordinary change at Christmas.
Is Westlink thinking at all about maximising their mileage between towns?
Westlink's a whole discussion I'll go into in a bit, but at the moment the whole thing's on a rundown to end of contract now, and it needs a complete reboot. We know that. It's trying to do too much with too little.
On which note, I'm going to now move on and get Jason Freeman from the Big Lemon to talk about the X10 service.
I just want to say, probably should plug the night service, the new one, the X14. My understanding is it's getting quite a good uptake and giving people freedom to stay out later. And we'd encourage people to really use that over a taxi. It's a good initiative.
Has anyone used it?
Some
report said about 2 o'clock in the morning, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to prejudge. People do want to stay out late.
I'm just saying generally, pensioners are not usually out there at 2:30 in the morning.
I mean, I must admit, it crossed my mind when I first heard about the service that I was thinking, oh gosh, what's the clientele going to be like on a bus at that time of night, travelling from Bristol all the way down to Weston-super-Mare? Have you found it's been okay?
Yeah, it's been it's not been empty. It's carried sort of between about a dozen and sort of 30 a night. So it's early days, and there's it's not just people out having a good time. It's something like 40% of jobs in Bristol involve work between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. So there's a lot of people working who will be appreciating that bus.
That's good. Okay, Jason,
Hi there.
Would you like to tell us how the X10's doing? Are you still pleased with it?
Yeah, we are still very pleased with the X10. It's too early to tell whether the timetable changes are having a positive effect on passenger numbers. But again, the same as Rob with the X5, we haven't had a major drop-off on passenger numbers. And I think our first trip out of Clevedon and Portishead in the morning is actually carrying more now than it did before, that it's running slightly earlier. So it is catching workers going towards Filton, which is what we want at the end of the day.
And you're finding people are using it to go through to Southmead Hospital? They
are, yes. Even some of our mid-afternoon journeys, which you would expect to be quite less used, we're finding our 5 to 2 from Southmead is actually quite busy, heading back towards Clevedon and Portishead. And you've told us in the past, so of course you'd like
to put a second bus on and have a more frequent service. How are things standing in that respect?
I don't think it's where it needs to be commercially yet. I think there is still some work to do, and we are working closely with North Somerset Council with regards to what happens with the changes in September. We've got a meeting next week. So if anybody's got ideas and suggestions for where they would like to see additional journeys, then please let us know.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's an invitation to you all. Questions from the floor on the X10 service?
It's probably worth me just stating that the Combined Authority and ourselves are doing some work on the future of buses and how they're going to be run. And part of that is there's been a sort of gap analysis done. I think North Somerset have an ambition to join WECA, and I think that probably then leads to more collaboration in cross-boundary services. It is worth noting the X10 is it's been identified as a key corridor to improve in this study. And they think it's underperforming. And I think, to be fair, Big Lemon's efforts to stabilise that and take that route on is starting to bear fruit. But there's an awful lot more movement and people travelling down that corridor that could use this. So I think there is probably a case to sustain it as socially necessary and trying to improve it forward. I just can't give you a timescale on that at this time.
And Jason, because you use the motorway, do you find that, particularly during the summer, that there are times of the day when that becomes a bit troublesome?
There hasn't been too much issue with the M5 yet. I think it's too early to tell at the moment how much of an impact it will have on the service, but we do have plans in place here if there is a bus stuck to react and be able to get something else out to recover the service at either end.
Oh, okay, good. Bob?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, being a frequent user of the X10, sadly to attend hospital appointments, speaking to not residents just of Portishead, but Bristol as well, as I'm sitting waiting to attend the appointment. I think it's the case in a lot of situations that the times of the appointments, and I think that's why you're finding yourself busy at that 10 to 2 bus. And, you know, personally myself, I think it's a great service. As I understand, I spoke to you before about this hop on, hop off, and that it was actually cheaper than a standard bus ticket. And I think most people in this room don't even know that. And it's a great service that you should promote.
Can you just elaborate a bit?
Yeah, so the hop on, hop off service, as I understand, you can basically get from Portishead to Clevedon for £1.
Yeah, no, it's Portishead. So locally within Portishead, you can travel one way for £1. So if you're going to travel between the two towns, then it is £2.
All right, so it's still in Portishead, anywhere in Portishead, it's £1.
Yeah.
So that's cheaper than first bus. Not tried to down first bus there, but you know, I really think we should try and get an hourly service to Southmead. I'm sure most people realise that anything after 4 o'clock is going to be impossible for the X10 because of the motorway. But a service from, I don't know, 8 till 4 on an hourly service, I think would be brilliant.
Well, it is something we're looking at, Bob, as to where we can tentatively add additional journeys throughout the day. So, like I said earlier, if anybody's got any suggestions of where they think additional trips would be beneficial to passengers, now's the time to let us know.
Oh, I'd like to travel on your X10, but I can't actually find out where I get on it. I live down by the marina. Unfortunately, the bus stops don't seem to have any information on them in paper. There's nothing in the libraries. And for people that don't have smartphones or don't even know how to use them, and I'm still learning on just to find out information about the X5 today took me about an hour. There's not enough advertising.
So I'm
only aware of one stop in Portishead.
So we serve Coombe Road, Harbour Road, by the surgery, all the stops along there.
But
North
what-
Somerset have done a leaflet drop to nearly every house.
Well, they haven't done one in
In
mine, otherwise I
Portishead.
would know. I'm just
So-
saying that its information is part
Yeah,
of the problem.
I will go back to
Noted.
North Somerset, and I'll talk to the marketing team, because I know they have been sending leaflets with timetables out, and there's been free use vouchers within that pack as well. So I will go back to the team and speak to them to find out what's happened.
The one thing that is different and probably can confuse people is that it doesn't go into Sainsbury's, which is an interchange between the X4 and the X5, and there's nothing really in that area to indicate to people that it doesn't go into Sainsbury's, and then if they want to catch it, they've got to get it from Keys Avenue or on the road at Wyndham Way.
That's definitely something we can take away and have a look at for September, adding Sainsbury's.
Because that's never been served since it began, and which was extremely confusing when it first started. And on that subject, the bus stop on Wyndham Way was
The Vale.
demolished 2 years ago and has never been replaced. And so that is a stop. That is a stop that us people who live on Bampton Way need to use it to get coming back on the X4 if you don't go to Conference Close or on Sheepway. But that stop has been demolished.
Yes, true enough. Yes, it's been missing, as you say, a couple of years now, hasn't it? It's marked on the road, on the carriageway, but yeah.
It's always a trade-off between the amount of bus hours available to us for what we pay for and the amount of stops we do. That's what it comes down to. So it's not, you add more time to a route, you've got to put more bus resource in. So I believe that's why Sainsbury's wasn't originally scheduled, because there wasn't indicatively enough time to serve it and to keep it down to one bus. Because ultimately we had another bus, that's probably another £250,000 per annum, potentially, less obviously fares. But at the moment, there isn't enough money in the service to provide two buses commercially. But there is a growing case to support it and add value to it. And again, part of the long-term strategy is to start not having to support commercial services because they're commercial again, and then we can invest more in the socially necessary in services like the X10. But there are many calls across the district. It's not just going to be Portishead. There are still areas of the district that don't have a bus at all, really. So it's going to be a debate as to who gets what, where, and when.
Okay, thanks, Jason. Carl, did you want to add anything in relation to Westlink other than what you've already told us?
I've got a couple of slides. I mean, I'm quite happy to just zip through those. I'm conscious Jackie's sort of...
Yes, me too. I'm conscious of Jackie sitting there.
Maybe we let Jackie have a go, because I'm sure she's...
Fine. Jackie, would you like to talk to us about bus hubs and how the consultation period is now closed, I understand. And so you've got the data, you know where things stand.
Did you get my slides? You did. So yeah. Oh, great, lovely. Thank you. Yeah, that's great, lovely. Thank you. Okay, I did have quite a few more slides with some really nice pictures of what's been done so far in the district, but they wouldn't go through the email system, so I've had to take a lot of the photos out, unfortunately. But yeah, just really to give an update of where we are in terms of the hub and the bus stop programme with through BSIP. Can you see it online?
Jason, it's not showing.
No.
It did briefly, and now it's gone again.
Can you see that, Jason?
Yep, thank you. We can now.
Great, lovely. If you could just move on to the next slide, that'd be great. Yeah, so as Nikki just said, Mike just said, the consultation, we went out to consultation for 3 weeks, or just over 3 weeks actually, and also had an event in the precinct area, and I think a few of you I remember speaking to here. We generally had a positive result, positive feedback on the hub. I don't know who's looked at the designs online and who's actually filled it in, but generally the response has been positive, both to the community event and on the online survey. We're just going through the results of that at the moment. We are looking to make some design changes following feedback we received. I did do a walk around with Mike on the when we had the community event, and you know, a few of those we're working with the consultants to try and bring forward and make a few tweaks and changes, partly to keep some of the parking in, partly to keep some of the, including the disabled bay, and moving the crossing sort of nearer to Coombe Road, and some other bits and pieces that we're looking to amend following the feedback from the consultation event and online. Thank you. I mean, this is the actual the designs. As I say, they are being changed at the moment. This is the concept designs. We're now working through to detailed design, and that's where some of the changes will come into effect. I mean, hopefully you know you're familiar with this, but we're looking at a sort of a hub area in the precinct area and a satellite on Harbour Road. And eventually, when the station comes in, obviously they'll be providing sort of bus facilities there. So that gives us sort of like a triangular effect within Portishead in terms of hub facilities. Mainly in terms of the precinct area, making a much larger shelter and waiting area there. Improving waiting facilities, digital information on Coombe Road, the bus stop B, making a much larger shelter there, and improvements widening the pavement in that area so we can accommodate the shelter, but removing the bus stop on the other side, which is at the moment, you know, duplicates services for the precinct. Harbour Road again, adding in some cycle facilities and improving the bus facilities along that stretch there. Thank you. And that's the sort of zoomed out area there. Obviously, there's a number of crossing facilities to be improved. We're looking at some sort of gateway feature at the top of Wyndham Way as you come into the high street to try and slow the traffic down there and make it easier for people walking in and just generally make the area a high street area rather than at the moment. I think traffic tends to speed round into that area there. We'll come back with some designs when we've got them. Thank you. In terms of the bus stop programme, as I said, I did have some nice pictures of what we've done in Weston so far. We've rolled out 22 bus stops in Weston, in Locken Road and New Bristol Road. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. They've got Sedum roofs and you know, sort of looking quite nice along that stretch. We're just waiting for the new RTI units to go in. There's been a bit of delay in getting those, but they should be due for installation towards the end of this month. In terms of the next batch of bus stops, that will see, as you can see on the screen, it's all the stops in scope there. There's about 66 stops across the district, quite a number in Portishead and the wider sort of Portishead area. We have letters have already gone out to all affected residents. We are looking to start rolling this programme out towards the end of May, beginning of June. Move on, please. So in terms of what we're delivering as part of the bus stop programme, obviously the new high-spec shelters, living roofs, as I said, in urban areas, new RTI units. They'll have an audio and braille function that will include live timetable information as you're used to, and as well as the static timetable display. You can see the the display on the screen there on the picture on the top left. It's more like a Kindle, but as I said, it does, you know, sort of several different functions and provides the audio for people that are visually impaired. Got new bench seats. Trying to install those as opposed to purchase where space allows. Where the pavement's narrow, it's quite hard to do that. But we've got sort of armrests on those seats as well to make it easier to people get up from the seats. Solar panels where there's no existing main supply. New West branded flags that stops with poles. Low energy lighting. And space for mobility scooters, wheelchairs and pushchairs. You can see in the bottom photo there, we've got like what we call a totem. That's sort of the information display that has the RTI unit on there. And generally just tidying up the areas we're working in, so dealing with any ponding, making sure the footways around the bus stops are functioning properly. And extending bus cages where necessary. We have a lot of problem with people parking right up against the bus cages, which means the buses struggle to get in and out of the bus cage, whereas if we extend them, that gives a bit more room to get in and out and align properly with the bus borders.
So, Jackie, the yellow marking, the hatching on the road, is technically called a bus cage?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, sorry, I should have, rather than using jargon. Thank you. And in terms of engagement, residents have already gone out to, letters have already gone out to residents that are directly affected. They went out a few weeks ago. Press release, I think we have sent something out, but there'll be something a bit more nearer the time. Social media, gone out in the BSIP newsletter, and we will be putting posters up at existing stops advising of upcoming replacement as and when we're working through. So there's 66 stops in scope at the moment. We do have another about 44 to deliver after this batch. That's currently in design as well. Well, then once the stops and hubs, etc., are in place, we'll do some further press promotion, additional promotion to local residents, and some comms around the change from the traditional RTI to the use of the new e-inks, which I said is going to be slightly different, but hopefully offer better facilities. No, so in terms of the hub, we looked at various locations in Portishead, and Sainsbury's was one of them. Sainsbury's was discounted largely because it's taken the footfall away from the town centre. Yeah, in terms of a hub, so a hub. Yeah, okay. So a hub is like an interchange place. It's where different bus services come in. Yeah, a bit offers other facilities. So links to cycling, walking facilities, trying to improve the pedestrian movements, and extra seating, planting, information points, that sort of thing. So.
You've got footpaths, you've got cars, you've got everything there, but no bus shelter.
No, we have been trying to work with Sainsbury's to provide a bus shelter there. That is part of our bus stop programme. It has been a bit challenging, I have to say, but we are still working on it. So, okay.
It's worth pointing out that the train station eventually will become a hub point as well, or a focal point, and which is not too distant from Sainsbury's. So.
Been living here 9 years. We've been promised for 25 years. In that station, I believe it's happened.
I believe shall we use the pun on track? Sorry, I'll leave now.
We're planning to have another bus forum meeting in November, and there'll be railways included in that programme.
That was, I think, that was all I'd got to say, really. So, unless there's any questions.
Probably should say about them.
Questions from the floor?
Oh, yeah, I had all this. So let's take them out. So.
Could we just add a little bit more to that as well?
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah, and I was just going to say I did have some slides in earlier and I had to take them out because the files were too big. But you may have seen that all the shelters in the district are currently being rebranded. So the ones that aren't being upgraded are being rebranded. They are looking quite nice, and I had some really nice photos to show you, but obviously couldn't get them through. So, yeah, if you've seen sort of out and about on the streets, you know, all the shelters are starting to look quite nice. So. Yeah, I'll do that. I must admit I was running out of time, so
But by rebrand, it's a bit more than just a rebrand. To be fair, we've taken the opportunity to repair most of the shelters, some of which were in a poor state. So I genuinely think a lot of them are looking brand new. In many cases, they're replacing glass, fixing panels, seating. So it's really been quite extensive and quite good timing, because a lot of the shelters are 5 to 10 years old, so they're midlife and they really did need a bit of care and attention. So you will now see across the whole district a universally branded, hopefully fully repaired set of shelters. The only exception to that is if they are going to be replaced, then we're not going to rebrand them at the moment. So there are some that are not done on purpose.
Jackie, hi, I'm Dave Werrett from All Aboard the Bus. I actually picked up one of your leaflets and spoke to your team quite a length down at the precinct. I moved away from the discussion after having a discussion with you all about the way things were being communicated and the way that a lot of people couldn't understand or use the communication methods, which I said were usually online, okay, which was via your website or email or by the dreaded QR code. I remember having a big discussion about the QR code. As I left, I was handed one of your leaflets to go online and to do the consultation, which I can do, folks, and I managed to do it, okay? And as I said at the time, I've got no problems with the hubs and the new hubs and things like that. If we're going to get them, we may as well take them and get them. But what I found when I got home was that on your leaflet, the only way that you could communicate and do the actual online consultation was via a dreaded QR code or by online. So effectively, in my opinion, what that does is that actually alienates and eliminates an awful lot of people who can't use those services. And those people are, in actual fact, probably the people that the bus services have had or they use because they're either in sort of like technology poverty or whatever, as they like to call it, so they can't use these systems, or they have disabilities of one form or another, or are aging, and a lot of them can't drive, as Bob said earlier. For a medical condition, you can't drive. That happens to a lot of older people. So I think communication is a big issue, and it actually is meaning that people who do have these disabilities are being excluded from the whole thought process, and I think that does need to change. So could you look at that, please?
Yeah, I mean, I should say this was the second community event we had. We had one back in November last year. And all the feedback, we spoke to, you know, sort of like a good number of people at both events actually, and all the feedback that people gave us on the days has been fed back into the design process. You know, I've personally been out at all of the events and can guarantee it's been fed back. We had a big workshop yesterday with the consultants to make sure everything's been included. We've also been out with the Disabled Access Group as well to all of the, we didn't come out to Portishead because we didn't have any local representatives, but we've been out to other areas with the Disabled Access Group to you know, understand some of the issues from their perspective. In terms of the bus stop designs, we've certainly had a workshop with Disabled Access Group, with the chair of the Disabled Access Group attending one of our workshops, and that's where some of the feedback in terms of the seating with the armrests, etc. In terms of the digital, fully appreciate it's challenging. As I said, where we've fed back everything that's been fed back to us verbally. We did offer the opportunity to send leaflets out and print the survey forms off and people to send them back. I can't remember that anybody took us up on that on the days when we were out on the streets, but yeah, we certainly did offer that opportunity. So, okay. And it is something I'll feedback just generally in terms to our comms team, because yeah, I do recognise it's not ideal. You know, not everyone is online, and there were some issues I think in accessing the designs as well. So, okay.
Thank you.
Hello, there's a bus stop along by the one way, which has got a bus stop, but the road markers have never been completed because I believe the people in the house probably objected, and the car's still parked there. So, I mean, is it a bus stop or? I mean, it is a bus stop because the bus stop's there, but there's no road markers to stop cars parking there, which is not really very convenient for the buses.
Yeah.
Are you talking
Which
about
car?
the one at the Albion?
Yeah.
The Albion. Mhm.
So there has been some protests from the resident there. Ultimately, it's council highway. The resident doesn't own the highway. We've tried to accommodate changes. I don't know where that's got to though. To be blunt, there has been a vociferous request to remove it.
I wasn't aware of this situation, so we could try to follow that one up.
I'm not saying I don't understand, but actually the X5 could go up Bristol Road where our proper bus stops and go right around the roundabout and come back again. It's not going to, but I think the person whose house the bus stop overlooked, I don't think he was very enamored when they could look into his bedroom window.
Well, there we are, Carl. There's another suggestion of a tweak to the route going up to the roundabout and back again. Yeah. It's not a bad suggestion. Bob, you have a question. There are, yeah, three.
Again, it is running time though. It's
2 minutes.
Yeah, that can make a big difference. I'm sorry, but it really can. I'm not saying no, just you had 2 minutes along the route 5-6 times all of a sudden.
Well, the cars are parked there, so.
No, there should be a bus cage formally and it should be enforced. Yeah. If there's a bus stop, it should be a bus cage.
Right, Bob, you had a question.
I'm a fan of what I see is wasting a bit of BSIP money, or in other words, public money, on gadgets. Just to give an example, there are 144 bus stops in Portishead. That's bus shelters, bus boards, bus flags. I presume all of them will be rebranded as West Local, which comes at a cost. The bus shelters, I understand, are between 10,000 and 15,000. Is that correct?
Depends whether you include the infrastructure and other works.
Okay, so you'll then have your solar panels, you'll have your veggie tops, or whatever you want to call them, or your grass tops. You'll have a digital information board. I understand you'll have lockers, recharging points for bikes, digital displays. All of this costs money. I understand the bus shelter has a 15-year lifespan. Does that mean the contracts that go out to these companies will also have a 15-year cover? Because otherwise we're back to square one again by starting up a new contract. As Carl, you're aware of my issues with our Channel and Clear Channel. So in essence, will the rebranding be more than the 150 proposed shelters that are being done? So obviously all the bus flags that are in, I understand it's about 1,700. Sorry, so yeah, is it 1,700?
Yeah, I think it's around
it's
about
approximately
that, yeah.
about 1,700 in North Somerset, which is a lot of money. Is North Somerset and WEC are expecting large payouts from central government, like the one they got with the BSIP, which was something like 150 million?
So just want to correct a few things there. So
Yeah.
the rebrand program, repairing our shelters and putting a consistent universal brand like any major city such as London, Manchester, Birmingham, helps identify a network and a common network. It's a good thing.
I quite agree with that.
That program has cost 300,000. Now that's pretty good value, I would argue, to repair all our shelters and make them consistent and invest in them. The alternative is we could just do nothing and just abandon them and let them rot. I don't think anyone's in favour of that. So are you advocating we don't invest in our shelters?
44 that you've got in Portishead, almost a third now, are either unused as no longer part of the route. So Bristol Road, which I think has 6 bus shelters and bus stops, I think. So
Be investing in shelters that are disused, they'll be decommissioned.
So they just sit there, or you're going to remove them?
We will generally decommission where there is definitely no intent to use them again. where we have Westlink, we will sustain them.
So the 14 on Brampton Way, they are going to sit there, or will they be removed?
It's very specific. I can't go into each stop in this forum. It would take
I mean, it says
where there's a case to sustain them and keep them, we will refurbish them. Where there isn't, we will be removing some.
And that's my concern, Carl. Obviously, the cost to uniform the bus format for North Somerset is coming at a big cost.
It's not really a big cost, though, is it? The refund is not huge. Placement of the popular stops is an investment in shelters for people.
But doing the high street is not covering the whole route. So if you look at the X4 or the X5, so the X5 travels along Clevedon Road. You've got bus shelters, bus flags that have probably been up there for in excess of 30 years that have never been changed, like the ones at Portishead Cemetery, so Northwestern Cemetery. I think they've been there for like about 20 years, and they've got moss. They're falling down. They're rusty.
Yeah, so those that are end of life and not going to be used will be replaced. Those that are still in use will be replaced with modern new aluminium poles, probably. I'm happy to have an offline discussion about it, but it's a complex situation.
Yeah, I'm just trying to sort of.
Other questions coming as well. Yeah. Thank you, Dave.
Hi again. I just want to question or call into question the unused statement related to the bus stops. Okay, they are in actual fact in use. They're in use via currently Westlink. So they're not unused. So I think that should be amended. And also, as we've seen from several of the conversations already and questions already, a lot of people do want to see some of those bus stops being brought back into use. Again, I relate back to people with disabilities or mobility issues. Okay, they cannot necessarily get from, say, the depth of the harbour side to the main bus routes. They can't get there. Some of them can't get from Brampton, from around Brampton, right? Myself, I had a great example yesterday about how Westlink is failing us, which I've emailed to you, Carl, already. Basically, I took about an hour, 2 separate sessions going on their site to try and get a Westlink bus, which I can do online, but a lot of people can't. Okay. And basically, I had on each occasion, I kept getting throughout an hour between 9 and 10 o'clock when I wanted to go to Clevedon from Walton Bay. And I tried also from Portishead at the same time. I could not get a Westlink bus that took me from either the centre of Portishead or from Walton Bay up to Clevedon Community Centre, which is up by Hill Road. Instead, what I got was a little message that said, sorry, there are no buses available at this moment. Very polite. And then it said, your nearest bus is to walk 25 minutes to Walton in Gordana, which is down a hill like that. Okay. Or 20 minutes to the X4 at the X5. Then I have to switch buses to get an X10 in Clevedon to go up to the Hill Road area, and then I'd have a 10-minute walk the other way. So, like we've been saying with all aboard the bus, we're trying to work with Portishead Town Council on this about getting these round the houses buses, using these stops again, so that people who do have difficulty with mobility, it's all very well saying everybody can cycle or walk for a half a mile. The young people could do that. Older people, and someday, I hope it never happens to the people in charge, obviously, but it may be you that then can't get anywhere. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to fight for those people and for the people who are currently being excluded from the bus services. We need bus services that work properly, that they can rely on, that are reliable. Okay, and that's what we're not getting. So that's what we need to address.
Thank you, Dave.
I completely hear your cause. As you know, I've genuinely tried to do everything I can to address that cause, but ultimately, there is not enough buses in the country, nor money, to provide a universal service. That's a fact, statement of fact. Previous governments prioritised buses, and effectively said where it's competitive and commercial, carry on. Where it isn't, they left it to the councils, and they didn't fund councils to provide the services you describe. So we're doing our best. I know Westlink hasn't met the demands that it should have done, nor has it been centred on the areas that it needed to be. It's been too universally spread like a jam on a massive loaf of bread. So part of the job with Westlink, if that is to carry on, and that is an if, it needs to be focused on areas that don't have access to the bus and not actually used as a taxi for children going to school in city centres. So we know that's a problem. The complexity of Westlink is that North Somerset doesn't own the contract, the Combined Authority do. It was rushed in the pandemic and the emergence of the pandemic. Whatever comes next needs to be much more tuned in. So we've got that message. There is supposedly going to be a project soon to start the renewal process. And at that point, we need to speak to people such as yourself, David, to find out what the heck we can do with this thing to make it work. One of the most important changes you will see that is delayed from April, but now will come in June, is that the contractor are moving to smaller taxi-based vehicles, 8-seat vehicles, because at the moment, the current EMED setup, the drivers are not available when there's the most demand. For whatever reason, and there are many, they're basically on break in the middle of the day and they're not available or anywhere to be seen when people seem to want to use them. They've tried this in the north of in Bristol. They've used taxis, and what they found is a significantly better availability. And that is basically why we're winding down the minibuses and going to a more taxi-based approach, because the driver hours are more flexible, demands can be met better. The current contractor are really on notice for an extent for the last year. I'll be blunt, they haven't performed at all well. And we have made remonstrations. And David, I think I've copied you into some of the emails, and the responses are not appropriate. I'm not going to defend a service that ultimately isn't meeting the need. They've had a lot of money and a lot of time to make this good, and they haven't. So what comes next will have to be different.
In relation to that, when you consider that, because a lot of this is a lot of the spend from North Somerset is actually going also out of the area to purchase these from suppliers that live out that are outside the area. Could it be considered that we use more local taxi firms for this process to bolster them? They would in then turn their drivers into Portishead.
Do not rule anything in or out. The vision years ago for Westlink was to have a platform that any contractor can come in and provide the service. So if, say, a taxi firm had a demand that they couldn't use or space they couldn't use, they could go on the platform and provide the service for a couple of hours. It shouldn't necessarily be restricted to one operator. And the other ideal there is community transport should be able to go on the platform and deliver some of the services for us. That's what we need, is a service that provides a platform that provides the service for many people to go, not necessarily one operator. And then you have potential risk of one operator not delivering. The other thing with Westlink is it shouldn't compete with bus services commercially at all in any way. It shouldn't compete with commercial services either, Westlink. So we need to make sure that that isn't the case. And ultimately, there should also be a feeder service to your regular bus service, not used to transit where buses actually go. And we've seen that as well. So there are, ultimately, the whole world's been experimenting with demand responsive transport, and no one's really got the answer fully correct yet. The platforms have moved on, the technology's moved on. We can do a lot better with it than what we've got now. I'm not going to deny that. It's not fully in my gift to influence it, though, at this point.
Right, fine. Thank you. Team, including Jason, do we have anything to add in our remaining 15 minutes or so on any matter related to this Open Bus Forum?
I do have the slides from Westlink, which I'm happy to just have distributed to anyone that wants them. I can quickly whisk through them. I'm not fully knowledgeable on everything in them. It's a presentation I've been sent.
Is it worth it when the service is going to...
If there's nothing else anyone wants to talk about, I'm happy to go through it. Yeah.
General questions from the floor, I mean, related to whatever.
So I'm keen to from the X4, so I didn't pursue that earlier, but the point about rerouting the buses up around Down Road and Nor Road. I live halfway up Nor Road, so when I first came here, you could choose to come or to start your journey on the bus going down Nor Road into Bristol or Portishead, and coming home, the one that went anti-clockwise. You said that was being considered. It seems to me extraordinary that we've opposite where I live. There are two bus stops outside. One has a shelter and is never used, and the one on the other side doesn't have a shelter and is the one that's used by all the X4 buses now. And there's no RTI information there either. I can't believe it'd be too difficult to alternate the buses, one clockwise and anti-clockwise. Nobody would lose out, and people would gain by having the choice of saving 10 minutes or 15 minutes by not having to go the wrong way around the loop down Road and Nor Road.
The complication sort of lies in the fact that casting your mind back to the old days when they did go round alternately, that the outbound service would come down cab stand and go through the high street, which of course it's not doing at the moment because they're all going into the outbound Coombe Road hub, or certainly the proposal to put a bus hub there, by coming up West Hill to keep the circuit going, aren't they? And they would have to rejig the whole service pattern to be able to facilitate that two-way route on Nor Road, which is in their hands, not mine.
We find simple routes are the best way for us to grow bus patronage, and where people need, if people, the X4 is every 20 minutes. It's nearly a route where you'd probably step out your house and just wait at the bus stop for the bus. So if that's the best kind of service for growing bus patronage. If people have to look up which side of the road they need to be on, and it will be a different time on a Saturday and a Sunday, and the bus goes a different way, and actually there's a lot to think about. And I understand.
We get used to that. And people would use the bus if it took 50. You should get into Bristol 15 minutes more quickly than you can at the moment. From certain places on that side.
Therein lies another question.
Yeah, Sainsbury's Orange Coombe Road anyway. So is that what you're saying about a bus stop on your doorstep? It doesn't happen. The bus stops are there, but no bus stops.
I mean, that's
you don't even see a Westby.
It's an incredibly complex debate, isn't it?
Ray, you've got a question over there. Use the mic. Oh, sorry, Lisa. I didn't realise you had the mic.
I only wanted to say that your loop round Down Road and Nor Road had been functioning for about 30 odd years until it's taken away, and there was never any moans. People know it went one way and then went the other way. Yet then when I queried it when they changed it and said, "Oh, it's far too complicated, and people won't understand it." But I just wanted to draw that out.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, Lisa.
I noticed on your slides with Westlink you had zones. Is there any changes to those zones, Carl, with the last, is it a year you say we've got it for? Another year?
There's a couple of quite minor tweaks proposed in June.
Okay.
But because the new contract shift to smaller vehicles has been delayed by a few months, it's not been communicated. But in essence, we want to add a few sites in Weston in, I think, Uphill. But there's very minor changes at this point. I don't think there's any changes in Portishead.
So do you think Clevedon to Yatton journey will be available with Westlink?
Well, it is now.
It is available now, is it?
If you can get one. Makes sense.
That's the problem, isn't it?
It is.
Is it because the vehicles are reduced, or is it the drivers that are
It's
reduced?
actually the driver availability, we're told, isn't, they've got to be on break, or they're not available, or they're booked, and yet you see them sat empty. You have the same frustrations as I do.
Carl, do you want to rattle through it? I noticed it's specific to today.
So as stated, the North has had an adjustment to contract. The South has not yet, because it's run by a different contractor. We're being told June to implement smaller vehicles. We are going to phase down the minibuses, the larger vehicles, from 16 down to 4, and then we'll have smaller vehicles. The evidence is strong that they perform better and there's more availability. So I hope that is the case. Next slide, please. These are the current zones. They're very, very minor tweaks in Weston, partly to allow people with disabilities to get to the college, Weston College, with the recent changes to services there. I think there's also a slight tweak around Uphill, because they've changed one of the bus routes in Uphill as well. Next slide, please. This graph shows availability in rideshare since they've changed to smaller zones. Yes, since we made changes to the zones about a year ago. There was quite a big debate about having these 2 huge zones and lots of smaller zones. And we were highly advised by Via not to do it, and they didn't believe it would work. And I have to say, actually, it's improved the situation massively, although you wouldn't necessarily have seen that through availability. Next slide, please. Some indications on how the service is working and where the demand is. You will notice that Portishead has quite a sizable amount of usage despite the poor availability, as does Clevedon. Probably one of the biggest users of the service is Clevedon Portishead, in fairness, which is good, but not good enough. Next slide. Just shows some of the movements around the district in a more visual format for you, where people are using the service. Now, this is what I was indicating should be an improvement. It's what they call Met demand and driver hours. So you'll notice that the minibus Met hours and driver demand, as they call it, is not very good, whereas the taxi is much better. So you get a better availability throughout the day. Sorry, yes, Paul? Yeah.
I just wondered if there's any chance of you pointing kind of which one you're sort of talking about.
Sadly, I can't, because I don't have a pointer.
You get up to this point.
I could, yes, absolutely. I don't know if the microphone will carry, though. It's a bit of a trade-off. So at the moment, what we're finding is that there's just a general lack of availability when people want to use Westlink, because the driver's just not available, whatever. The taxi model gives a much higher proportion of availability. So when you try and book, there should be someone available to actually do your journey. That's the gist of it.
Thank you.
All right, next one. Trying to remember what this slide was now. So this is an example in the north. So what they're showing is an increased availability compared to the minibuses. More journeys being done, just a better delivery model. Basically, professional bus drivers in minibuses for Westlink for demand responsive travel isn't flexible enough. And that's why generally buses are scheduled, because they can manage that situation better. Whereas in a demand responsive system, they can't manage drivers' hours and demand in the current regulation. So basically, the new model that's coming, that will be tried for the remaining 8 months of the contract, and should be more efficient, and hopefully means you can actually have a better chance of getting a journey you want. Next slide. The other point is, because it is taxi-based drivers and not professional minibus drivers, professional bus drivers even, the costs are going to be lower. So in the north, they've gone from a sort of average of £25 per journey per person down to closer to £10 to £12 per journey. That's still a lot of public subsidy, but in fairness, when you compare that to running an empty bus in a rural location with no one on it, it's actually better value. So there is hope for DRT as a socially necessary service, as a complement to your bus network, and that's the point. We want DRT to get people onto a larger, efficient network. I think that's it.
Thank you.
No worries. Sorry, hope you can all hear me then.
Thank you. Thanks, Carl. In our closing minutes, Bob, are you going to be talking for 5-10 minutes or just 2? 2 minutes.
Yeah, I just a point, Carl. Obviously, clearly, what's been said today is the frustration. I myself, if obviously unable to drive, have to walk 25 minutes to get a bus. And like anyone else in North Western, this is what we're highlighting. Obviously, us this end, unless we want to go to Western on the X5 to get to Bristol or anywhere else, we're going to have to walk to the high street. Same as the people that live on the marina now, because obviously the service has now gone from the marina area and the Vale. And then obviously at the top of West Hill, although the X4 runs its route and turns around and comes back again, the rest of West Hill area and not the top end of Portishead, there's no service. So unless you've got a car, you're buggers. And I think that's the concern with the Westlink service, is where that's going to now go, because it's essential. I mean, I'm 63. I want to retire as ASAP. I don't know where my health will be with driving a car. I may have to surrender my car completely over the next couple of years. So I'll be in that position that I am now, which is getting a bus virtually every day. And me and my partner, I mean, we must have, on average, we use the Westlink service probably 50 times a month easily. So obviously it is essential for us.
Yeah, so I do respect that, and that's why we need to engage with people to get Westlink right, because it isn't right at the moment. And then that's why I hear calls for brown circular services in large towns. It's something we explored with BSIP, and we do hear you. The trouble is, 5-10 years ago, most of them died out. I mean, when I first moved to Clevedon, there was a circular bus, and it was well used. Trouble is, it was a tiny bus, and clearly not enough people in that tiny bus to make a profit, and that's why they disappeared. We're not ruling out circular services. It's how we pay for them. And it's the question mark as, is that better than a DRT? I don't know. Early days.
Right, 1 minute.
That's okay, I'm not long. So my name's Tracy. I just wanted to let you know that we've been holding kind of community conversations in Portishead. And a lot of the things that have kind of been raised today have been raised by those residents that have been attending those meetings. And that's back in April. So it does sound like, even though you are kind of maybe answering these questions like 2 or 3 times each meeting, there's still issues. They're still relevant, and there's still people out there that aren't in these meetings today that are raising exactly the same things.
So the problem I have is, as an officer of the council, I'm not obviously allowed to sit and scroll community feedback and social media. That's just not part of my job. I do try and keep an eye on stuff where it comes up in my feed in the evenings. But my shout really is, if you're going to have community discussions, I can make myself available to come and have a discussion. I have done in the past, haven't I? Yeah. I can, not maybe me or an officer can come and listen to your concerns. There's a long, long way to go to improve public transport. It isn't a universal service. The only thing by law we have to do is facilitate concessionary passes, and we have to have a consideration to socially necessary services. We are lucky in North Somerset compared to other areas. We've had quite an uplift in government funding. When I took on this role, we had £58,000 to provide socially necessary services. That's it. It's all that was left in the coffers. To be fair to the government, they've given us millions. And we are seeing the benefits of that. We are seeing new buses, higher frequency than what we had. I know it's not perfect. That's why we need to know what you want. And we will try our best.
So it's not about duplicating things that already exist. I've brought sort of residents that were part of those meetings to the meeting today.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
So do we.
Hi again. Just saying for everybody here, all aboard the 56 have been taking these questions on, and been fighting for about 3 years with all these questions and trying to get circular buses and things like that. I was quite pleased at the start of the meeting when it was discussed about getting support for a new circular bus round Portishead, which would help a great deal. Okay. But what I see is that Clevedon, for instance, at the moment has actually got 7 buses. Maybe not overly regular, but they've got a lesser population than Portishead. Portishead has got 3 buses. And those are seemingly what we're sort of like left with. But I'm very pleased to hear that there's considerations being given, as Carl promised, under the new 3 million that became available from the government to support better buses in Portishead. Are you still giving that consideration, Carl? Because you said it would be considered in April with the chance of introducing it in September.
Thanks, Dave. Well, in a couple of years, we'll certainly have one up on Clevedon, which will be having a railway station back.
I mean, ultimately, it's transit lines, isn't it? And where do people want to go, and how do we meet the demand? So you can't have buses running empty. You have a really good service to Bristol. I may not seem it, but it's. And I guess that comes down to where do people want to go, and you could say the same about Western. Yeah.
I'm closing the meeting now.
Okay.
It's gone 5:30. So Jackie, Carl, Rob, Jason, thank you very much for attending, and thank you for the audience and coming this afternoon. There will be hopefully a meeting on Thursday, November the 13th. And can I ask you all to try to bring more people here, because last time we had, I'm pretty sure, about 60 odd. And we're down quite a few this time. And if you want these forums to continue in person, where we have officers here and other representatives from the bus companies, then we need an audience. So, well, I think in all fairness, it's gone 5:30 and they're here. And I'm not sure that they would wish to be here if it was going on until 7 or something like that. We have discussed this in the past. Yeah.
The problem we have is, as officers, we have family lives as well.
Yes.
We're happy to give up our time to be here, but it is a friction. We do have the bus forum as well. I need to plug that. North Somerset has a regional bus forum taking place, and I can't remember the date, and that's really naughty, but it is in May.
It's week commencing the 19th. So.
If we circulate that, can you promote it for us?
Well, you see, I don't know about that, and I have attended one in the past, and they are useful.
Yeah, we'll make sure you get that.
Yeah.
So that's about everything.
Thanks, everyone, and don't forget to keep an eye on the notice boards, because that's where we put the posters up.
Thank you.